everyone. Welcome to this episode of Claims Never Sleep. I'm your host, Meghan Henry, and today I'm joined by Kevin Walker. Kevin is a claims manager at NBIS. And most of the stuff that Kevin deals with are crane accidents or construction accidents, which are often associated with catastrophic losses. And with that, there's a lot of parties, there's a lot of risk transfer opportunities, and there's just a lot of players. And with a lot of players, it just gets more complex. So he's going to come on and talk a little bit about that and just his interesting road into claims. So with that, let's bring him in.
This is the Claims Never Sleep podcast, presented by Cruiser Mitchell, with your host, Meghan Henry.
Good morning, Kevin. Welcome to this episode of Claims Never Sleep. How are you today?
Doing well, Meghan. Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Thanks for coming on. You were one of I started recording episodes for this podcast in the last few weeks, but I'm so honored to have new guests on a new launch of this podcast. And I can't say enough to anyone who comes on. I appreciate the time you take out of your day to sit and talk to me and share, your experience in claims. And, you and I had talked on the phone and we talked back and forth about a few things that we're going to talk about today. But again, thank you for taking the time out to join me and talking to me today on this podcast.
Well, thanks for having me.
So, I ask this to pretty much everyone who comes on because everyone has a different path and how they got into claims. And I will say it's rare to find someone that claims is something that they, as a young lad, decided that that's what they wanted to do. And I'm sure your path is no different. So, how did you end up in the claims world?
Well, I can say when I was 5 years old, I didn't imagine I think when I was 5, I actually wanted to be a fire truck. I didn't want to be a firefighter. I just wanted to be the truck. It seemed like a cool thing to do, but
yeah, why not?
Yeah, but no, the short version that I give of how I got into insurance is basically I moved to LA to make it big in music, and here I am in claims. It's expanded a bit though. I taught band and choir at the high school level for 6 years after I got out of college, and my wife currently teaches band, and it's something that she has a real passion for, a passion that I don't share. I love it. I love music. I love making music, hearing music, all sorts of genres, but it takes someone like her who has the passion for it. And I realized I didn't have the passion, but I played in a band or two here or there. We all thought we were pretty good. It was, it was mid-90s Seattle, and we were going to be the next big radio ready but edgy thing. So yeah, when I made the decision to get out of teaching and to start a full-time music career, the logical thing to do was to move to where the music is and to get involved in as many things as possible. And I think that would have been a really fun, possibly still not as productive of a thing to do when I was, say, 18 or 19. But, it was fun. I enjoyed the experience. I got to see things, meet people, do things I hadn't done before. But at the end of the day, I realized I need a job. I need benefits. And
you started adulting a little bit. You're like, wait a minute.
yeah. There was kind of that second guess of, am I really doing the right thing here? And honestly, the first jobs I looked for were through temp agencies. Had a great .com job. Again, I'm really dating myself here, but it was, and it was just as the .com was contracting, not expanding. So, nothing stuck there. There was, a computer job here or there, but nothing that really caught my interest. And also dating myself, I saw a newspaper ad for an insurance job. I had no clue what it was. And in personal lines insurance, they hired me with no experience, which was nice. I got to do the 6-week training camp and learned more in insurance about 6 weeks than I'd known my entire life. And that's really how my insurance career started, just by an accident of looking for a job that was close to where I lived.
Which, that's not an uncommon story. The uncommon part is the first part, though. And I can't move on without asking you a few more
Mm,
questions about, your brief career in music. One,
right.
what is uh your instrument of choice?
Mm. So my most of my training is on trumpet,
Okay.
and then the thing that I have the most fun with is bass guitar,
Okay.
which is a little more exciting in a band than a trumpet. Not that there's anything wrong with trumpets in a band.
Well, I don't know. I mean, this is the time of like, what is it, Mighty Mighty Boss Stones, that the trumpet was.
You know, and you are right. That is the exact time period it was, kind of that second wave ska thing going on, and
Yeah.
all of that. So
I could
no,
I could totally see how like 18-year-old Kevin was like, I'm gonna make this work. I mean, look, these other
yeah,
bands are making it work, and it's cool and it's edgy, and
yeah,
I
yeah.
totally get it.
Yeah, though, when you get to about, 20 something, 5, 6 something, there's something about your frontal cortex finally developing that gives you ideas, and nothing, of course, wrong with those who, make it and make it big. I think that's great. But it's also kind of, if you haven't done it by your mid-20s, there may be other paths to
Yeah,
take. And
but although kudos to you for trying, right? So you can't go back and say, well, what if I had, or I wish
right.
I had done it. At least you gave it a shot. And when you said you went to go explore, did you like move out to like Seattle or Los Angeles to try to like get an agent and be part of like that the whole scene, or how did that work for you?
Well, I grew up in Portland,
Okay.
had taken a teaching job in Seattle, which was kind of the meeting place for a lot of the music in the Northwest, and just made the decision as it was time to move on from teaching and do something else. Like, yeah, there's a lot here, but what about Los Angeles? You hear,
Hmm.
you hear the stories of the
Yeah.
small town Nebraska kid who goes and
Yeah.
makes it big, and so there's a lot of the excitement there in it. And I'm glad I did it. You're right. I'd rather regret something that I tried and it didn't turn out than to wonder if I could have done it.
Yeah. And
Mm.
so do you still, play casually? Is it still something that's part of your life?
Um, Occasionally, it's not a huge part of my life. I've played in cover bands on occasion here and there. Playing trumpet right now in a community band, more kind of not the rock stuff, more the
Yeah.
legitimate stuff, if you will. And yeah, I still dabble a bit, but it's dabbling. There are people for whom it is a tremendous career and livelihood, and for me, I love the hobby. But
Yeah. Well, look, we all need hobbies.
well, exactly, keeps me off the streets and out of trouble.
Keeps
So
you clean.
yeah.
Okay, so you get that first job in insurance, and you start to learn about the insurance world, and I'm sure, like, much like me, like when I got out of law school, I had not a clue how important insurance was in the legal world, and I got my first job at an insurance defense firm solely because they were the only ones hiring, and I couldn't get a
Mhm.
job anywhere else. And I didn't have the faintest idea of how important insurance was. And then I was like, wow, like this is like I'd heard the word insurance defense. I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. Like that sounds terrible. And then realizing like how it really drives just a huge part of litigation and just the world. Um,
Yeah.
and I was like, wow, this is something. But when you took that first step, like what types of claims were you handling, and what were you doing at that point?
Well, and before I answer your question, I have to just turn it back to you for just a second because taking you personally back to law school momentarily, what were you thinking year one, year two? I mean, it's not like you go in and there's a residency to become a brain surgeon or to become a cardiologist. What was your thought process?
So I had a weird path. I now have to take you back to college, because when I was in college, I thought I was going to medical school. So I had a science background. Um, And during college, I decided to pivot, and rather to go to medical school, I decided to get a PhD in neuroscience and pharmacology. And I started that program, got into it 9 months, hated every minute of it. I was like, I do not belong in a lab. This is not for me. I like people way too much. I like to socialize. So I left the program, worked for a few years. But when I started law school, I had this heavy science background. So I had the original intention of becoming like a patent attorney. And I had the credentials to take the patent exam, and I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. But I soon realized while I had the background and I had the credits to qualify to sit for the exam, I was not a strong candidate compared to others who graduated with a degree in, engineering or mechanical engineering or biomedical science or whatever. I had a math and psychology degree. So my degree compared to those was, I just knew I wouldn't be at the top of the pool, because even though I could take the patent exam, I just didn't have that that degree in one of the sciences that I think would be valuable. So at that point, I was like, okay, I really liked property and land use. So I was like, how about real estate? And that was kind of what I was thinking. But I graduated in 2007, which was not a good time to get into
Okay.
real estate.
Right.
And I was like, I can't, this is not happening either. And so when I graduated, I had no job, and I contracted for, did one of those contracting jobs for a while doing the doc review. And really, litigation was the only thing in town that was hiring, because litigation, even in a down economy, does well. So I worked my network, and eventually it clicked, and I got a job in litigation. And looking back, I was like, why didn't I think about this all along? But it's just weird, because it's the things that you think you're passionate about. Because I look back now, I'm like, I would not have probably, like, not that I wouldn't have been a good real estate attorney. I think I would have been bored. It just, I think my skill set is better where I am. I just didn't realize it at the time.
That can be a hard realization to. Um,
Yeah.
and again, with the whole frontal cortex thing, we have all these kid ideas of what we want to do, how we want to do things, plans we've made, all of the encouragement that the media gives you in terms of what are you going to be when you grow up. And simple answer sometimes is just, I don't know.
Yes. And I tell this to my kids all the time. Like, you don't need to, like, it's great to say what you want to be when you grow up now. But just because you say it now doesn't mean you have to be that when you grow up.
Right.
I feel like my older daughter is just set that she wants to be an engineer. And that'd be great. It'd be great and wonderful if she does become an engineer. But I don't want her to think now, because she decided at 11 or actually she decided, I think at 8, that she wanted to be an engineer. That has to be something she has to do, just because she decided it was something she wanted to do.
I think people go down those roads sometimes, definitely.
Yes.
And I think if you talk to my kids, they're older and in college, and I think they would tell you about the mixed message from dad, because part of the mixed message is, hey, you don't know what you want to be yet. You haven't experienced anything. Go out, explore, do the things, find out what makes you tick, and then simultaneously, what are you going to do with this after college? Are you, can you get a job doing this? How much is that going to pay? What about the loan? So
Yeah.
it's, and I'm probably not alone in being the bearer of mixed messages on that, but it's
I think
it's a journey.
the key is, like, major in something that can find you a job, and minor in something that you like.
I like that.
If you really like English, minor in it.
Oh, I I like that. I like that. But no, and I guess going back to your actual question that I didn't answer, I started out in personal lines insurance, personal lines auto, and total of 13 years in personal lines. You start out handling just the basic liability, 2 cars here or there, 3 cars, 4 cars. Started dabbling very quickly in the litigation end of it, and then management as well. And it was a good way to start the career. Great great company, Mercury. Nothing but great things to say about them. I know they're still around in the personal auto world as well, and now some great mentors early on.
Yeah.
A manager in particular who took me aside early on and said, you should really work toward auto personal lines is great, but when you get a chance, learn some commercial lines. Get your certifications. He told me about this thing called the CPCU, which back in the very early days of my career, it just seemed like this mystical. Wow, can I do that? What is that? And it's those type of seeds that later on, as I developed professionally, as I became more focused on what I wanted to do, it made a lot more sense. Some of the early mentors, the ones who showed me, okay, it can be a very confrontational field, insurance adjusting. How do you navigate that? How do you navigate conflict without being conflicting? How do you, reframe the narratives? Those type of things that were, not just insurance skills, but they were life skills really, and
Yeah.
led to the professional development. Because even at that point, I still didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. If I grew up, I'm not convinced I did grow up, but there were just a lot of moments there where I understood finally, as I got involved in insurance, learned more, that type of, not just the people skills, but the analytical drilling down on policies, getting into the technical aspects, that really was a perfect personality match for me. So,
Yeah.
so I got where I needed to be, but it took a while.
Well, but that's not abnormal either. And I am in the position that I talk to a lot of people about their paths, and I have yet to hear a straight road.
Yeah.
Most are on the winding path. And I think the winding path is what makes us more well-rounded and better at what we do, because I think when you see more things, or you touch other lines of insurance, or you do other things, I think it helps you do what you're currently doing a little bit better, rather than just
Yes.
always doing the same thing. It makes you think about it from a different angle.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, absolutely. I mean, any and not even just in terms of the schooling, but the activities that you do, the music, the travel, all of those things, it, they enrich you. And when you land in that career position, if you land, because some don't, and that's, my favorite people have not figured out, I'm not the first person to say that, but some of my favorite people have not fully locked on to precisely what they want to do. So the thing that you take with you is the perspectives. And
Yeah, absolutely. So, but now you're in a much different, as you've bobbed and weaved,
yes.
and now tell us a little bit more about what you do now, because it's very different from where you started.
Yes. Now I'm a manager in commercial claims at NBIS, another great company. I've been with them almost a year. Good group of people, good and a good, interesting line of business, handling cranes, concrete pumpers, prime movers, heavy equipment. It's a really interesting set of exposures, and it's a great opportunity. Prior to that, working with logging, a little bit of oil and gas, construction. So really kind of taken a turn from, can I set up your rental car for you, to, the complex litigation, as that comes with things like
Yes.
construction defects, ongoing operations, that type of yeah, and that type of thing. So it's a lot different. You're right.
But also, I think something that I don't think I talk about enough is you have a wealth of knowledge that makes you a very interesting person to talk to at a cocktail party, because because think of all the weird things that you know about. And this goes for anyone in claims. Like, think of all the weird things that you know so many details about that you could probably carry on a conversation with a wealth of people outside of like your your normal circle, so to speak.
No, you're right. And some of it is very interesting for cocktail parties. I will say that at a certain point, your family will not have the same appreciation, and you'll get comments like, "Dad, I don't care how that bridge is being built." Like, well, yeah, but the girders, and they put it, the crane. It looks. I'm into the crane nerd phase
Mm-hmm.
right now, which is strange, right? I mean, if you look at me, I have not, I've not swung a hammer on a job site. I've not been in the control box. And yet here I am, and learning these things, and just like in the legal field, you have your plans of what directions, what subject matters you might like to work with. In insurance, unless you're really focused on a very certain type of thing that you like to do, what you do, the subject matter ends up having to do with the insurance company you go to.
Yeah,
I've worked,
absolutely.
I've worked for, I've worked for a carrier that handled a lot of restaurant slip and falls. I've never gone out and cut a tree, but
But you can tell someone if they did it incorrectly.
right, or just write the large check when everything goes tragically wrong, I guess. But which I guess in the insurance field, whether you're dealing with personal auto bodily injury, or you're dealing with workers' compensation, or anything, these the adjusting job, the claims job, has a lot to do with getting people's lives back together.
Yes.
And regardless of the complexity of the motion practice and the litigation, regardless of any of that, at the end of the day, something bad happened to someone. A business lost money, a person lost their life, any number of things, and it's a challenge sometimes to hit all of those pieces and respond with empathy, when at the end of the day, all you get to do is write a check.
Yes, but the empathy part is extremely important. And this is something I actually recently talked to someone else on this podcast about too. Is just taking yourself away from the loss, and more towards how the individual might be feeling, or the company might be feeling, or about the loss that had happened, and recognizing that if there is a traumatic event, the people involved or who witnessed it are going to feel that impact of that traumatic event, and you have to be empathetic to that.
Yes, and there's so many stakeholders involved in that as well. I mean, if you take, say a work site injury, a job site injury, you're going to have an insurance company who's obviously concerned about exposure, litigation, making sure everything is, that the policyholder is being taken care of, that regulations are being followed. But then you have the insured themselves. Obviously they didn't want something bad to happen. They didn't want someone to get hurt.
No.
You've got and then you've got the feelings with that. There's a reluctance to talk to the insurance person. What if I say the wrong thing? Not knowing that we just want to know everything so that we have all the facts and can make the decision. And then there's families of anyone who is involved, who was hurt, and it doesn't even have to involve injury, just large financial losses. None of us personally wants to go through something that affects us, our business,
Right.
any of those things. So yeah, figuring out who has what skin in the game, and what their needs are in the process is really important.
Yes. And also, though, going back to like the businesses, like for instance, like a crane company or a construction company, you know, what we've found, or you can find over the time, is that people also get a little defensive when they feel like we didn't do anything wrong, and sometimes it's hard to explain that, sometimes there's a difference between, well, you might not have intended to do anything wrong, but there could have been, some negligence happening here that maybe there wasn't an intent, but, you know, maybe not all the dots were dotted or not all the T's were crossed. And, we're just here to figure that out.
Yeah.
So we have all the facts, but then there can be a defensiveness, or a guard up with that.
Yes, absolutely. I think story I've told more than a couple of people is in one of my earlier commercial lines jobs, I had an insured that I needed to chase down and find out, hey, what's going on here? I think we're going to have a lawsuit filed. I need your help. What took place? What went on? It is a cable cut claim. So it's not particularly complex in terms of what happened. And I did finally reach the insured after a lot of persistence. It was via email, and I say, hey, great, thanks for responding to me. I'd just like to know, tell me about what happened and all that. And the response that came back was, it won't us. Like, okay, Your Honor, I just want to let you know, it won't us. And but I mean, it really illustrates that, particularly on these construction job sites, there's so much going on. There are a lot of moving pieces. Not everything is going to execute perfectly every day. And no contractor or subcontractor really starts their day and says, hey, can I hurt someone today? Hey, what can I really mess up that will give my insurance company a fit?
Of course, because it also stops work, which means it stops progress, which means they're not getting paid. And then there's problems. Like no one wants any of this to happen.
So it's, so I think you're right. There's a defensiveness where, no one wants for something bad to happen. And when there's a lot of moving pieces, there's a lot of places to point a finger. And I think I probably just summed up construction defects litigation in one sentence there. But
and then back to the construction sites and the moving parts. I mean, you and I had talked about this on the phone too, is that, when you're on a construction site, there are so many different entities there. And when an accident happens, the pointing of the fingers and the risk transfer with between the contracts is a huge thing. And, trying to figure out if and where, your insured's risk can be transferred is, I mean, when I'm in construction accidents, that's the first thing I'm looking at is, what does the contract say? And is there anyone else who's going to pick this up for me?
Yes. Because at the end of the day, you're assigned to the defense of an entity. I'm insuring an entity, and though we will have a big picture view of what happened, we will have a role that's very specific to who we're helping, to who we're protecting, indemnifying, and it can be challenging to keep track of what's going on, who's who has what to gain, who has what to lose. And on these job sites, the things that become important to us, you and me, in the litigation, are not important when you're putting up a 20-story building, when you're building a freeway overpass. Did this job ticket get signed? Do you have certificates of insurance on file for all of your subcontractors? Those are things that are so unimportant. I won't say unimportant, but just in terms of the big picture of when you are making something, the last thing that you think about, but sometimes the first thing you need to think about is, who's going to cover this? Where can I transfer the risk? Did I get the signature? And it's tough. It creates challenges on the litigation side, but we're not here to prevent things from happening. That's something entirely different. We're the ones who take care of things when something did go wrong.
Correct. However, I would say there is potential counseling, not counseling, I guess counseling is the wrong word, but advisement, especially if it's a company that's been insured, is a frequent insured, or whatever. You can discuss risk prevention, and counsel them on some best practices to at least help mitigate issues down the line. Whether or not they listen to you is another is another story.
That is true. That is true. And on the risk management side, like I just had lunch with one of our risk management guys the other day who his entire job is preemptively trying to see what can be done to prevent the accidents from the first place, to make sure that everyone understands the importance of the contracts. But at the end of the day, as he visits sites, when he talks to insureds, when he talks to agents, brokers, there is the sense of, yes, it's important for us to be careful. And I don't think any construction companies, for the most part, aren't careful. I mean, they do their safety meetings. It's not an overall industry-wide carelessness. It's, people who want to do the right thing, but their job is to build the building. Their job is to, remodel the interior. Their job is to do that. And, and our job on the claim side, oversimplified, is to write a check and write the right check to the right person. Your job, oversimplified, is when someone gets sued, to get them out of it, one way or the other.
Yes.
So,
but the issue becomes, though, if the certain boxes aren't checked or certain things aren't done, whether or not that truly did impact or have a domino effect onto whether or not the incident occurred, those are going to be the things that the opposing counsel is going to focus on.
yes.
and that's that's where the risk assessment comes in on the attorney side. Be like, okay, this is what happened. There are some missing pieces, or this, or perhaps this is done in every day, but we don't have that piece of paper for this day. And we know the fact that we don't have that piece of paper this day, even though it's done all the other times, the fact that it's not done this day, then opposing counsel is going to be like, well, it wasn't done this day, and then this happened, and it's going to be and then it's going to be before a jury, and then the jury's going to be like, oh my goodness, this didn't happen.
Right.
And unfortunately, you're not dealing with little injuries. You are dealing with catastrophic, typically injuries, or if it's a property loss, large losses. So the exposure is large.
Yes. And a lot of times, even when the numbers don't have a lot of zeros and commas, and when the injuries aren't catastrophic and visual and gut wrenching, there's there's a lot of smaller tragedies, if you will, that affect people a lot. I mean, that it doesn't have to be a catastrophic crane collapse or a 20 vehicle multi-fatality accident. It can be just as simple as the things you go through every day. You eat some bad sushi, you slip on a floor, and no one's asking to have these things happen for the most part. No one's really asking to. It just, these are the things that happen, and these are the mechanisms in place to fix them the best we can.
Yeah, I remember years and years ago, and this just sticks out in my mind when you say smaller tragedies. Years ago, I had this construction case that was a small job. It was a small demo job. And I would say they definitely did not dot all their I's across their T's. It was a messy scenario. And they had some of their contractors probably didn't have all their paperwork in line. And it was a demo project, and one of the contractors, in like a dilapidated neighborhood, the homes weren't in good shape. They were pretty much demolishing the home, and someone fell through, like the floor broke through, and and a nail hit the leg, so there was a whole tetanus issue going on. And so the whole thing got clouded, though, by maybe things weren't done exactly how they should have been done, but at the same time it was a home that was like already falling apart. So probably could there have been more safety measures in place? Sure, but it's
Yeah,
like those scenarios that it's like
mm,
tricky. Not, I mean, definite injuries, but tricky to work with on the defense side because like this, none of this is good.
yeah,
But it's also not all that surprising as to the specific project that was going on at that time. It was not a big giant, general contractor who had everything kind of in line. Not that it's okay.
right. It's well, I mean, and at the end of the day, um if I'm buying a house that is newly built, my biggest concern is, hey, is this a good house? Is it well constructed? Is everything straight, level, flat, and the water is where it's supposed to be, outside, not inside? Um, I personally, just in my own capacity, don't care if all the contracts are signed. If a buddy who was a subcontractor maybe, came in and did this or that or the other thing. I,
You want
in
your
my
house.
yeah, I mean, yeah, in my professional capacity, however, from what I do for a job, a lot of heartburn that comes from the very things that keep me employed, if not for the fact that these contracts don't always get signed. Some of this would be very easy. It would all be very push button. This is how it works. You pay this, handshake, everyone's done. There is no problem. But you exist, your job exists, I exist, my job exists, because that obviously is not how things play out. Um,
Yes.
and we don't see, we see the 1%, we see the one half, 1%, we see the places where things just, they did not go as planned or even close. And what we don't see, and even I lose track of sometimes, is the 99.5% that went just fine, delivered. I got my house, it looks great, that type of thing.
Yeah, and it goes back to what you were saying before that accidents do happen, and sometimes accidents happen not due to anyone's negligence. They just happen.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
but the problem is though we have a very skilled plaintiffs bar who are, even if it's just an accident that it just happened, it can, especially in probably the cases that you see a lot, you have very skilled attorneys who are able to just build and develop a high exposure type case, even if it's not on its face due to specific negligence.
yeah. No, that's true. I mean, at the end of the day, at the end of the case, at the end of the litigation, there are parties that go on a jury award sheet as to, how much will be awarded. Um, and that doesn't always reflect, sometimes things just happen. You can sign all the right paperwork, you can be careful, you can cross all the T's, dot all the I's, and still something unintended and unpleasant happens. And you know, what do? You unsort it on
Yeah.
our end, and that's the part we play.
Um, so one thing that likely comes up though in a lot of um, your files, though, especially with catastrophic incidents, is response. And um, I'm thinking when you have these incidents that happen on a construction site, you have OSHA involved, you have immediate response to the team or to the site, and I'm presuming that ideally you want counsel on the ground too to help protect
Yes.
the interests of your insureds, especially when OSHA is there and they start asking questions.
Yes, yes, exactly. I think early in the investigation, that's one of the, you really hit on something there with the catastrophic losses. The most important thing an insurer can do is to be on top of it as soon as we're aware of it. Now, the disadvantage does, there's an instance there where everything was chaotic, things went poorly, no one knows what is going on, there's a lot of commotion, and then a day or two later, people think, oh, I should call my insurance. And that unfortunately does happen.
I'm sure it
Um,
does.
but Yeah, outside of anything like that, optimally, you need a response team immediately, boots on the ground. Defense counsel is the most important piece in that. Just simply the protection of the investigative work product being the very least, but also coordinating the pieces early and avoiding the pitfalls that can affect the litigation down the line, preventing spoliation issues. All of those pieces. So no, having defense counsel on the scene as soon as possible is one of the most important pieces.
Yeah. And I mean, particularly with OSHA though too, because you know, I think what many forget is the individuals on the scene aren't, they might be very skilled at their crafts and their jobs. They, however, might not be as skilled at interviewing with OSHA representatives, and
Mm,
that those facts and those reports can be extremely detrimental in
yes,
litigation if
yes,
and I think no fault to those individuals that sometimes people just say stupid things.
yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, it's again, if if your job involves a desk, pens, papers, and keyboards and all of that, it's it's a lot different than the person whose job involves a jackhammer or virtually rappelling off the side of a building or looking down through 100-foot gap in the floor. So it's there's a lot of different perspectives on the job site, and when something bad happens, one of the first things that comes to any mind on the job site is OSHA. They're going to be here,
Yep.
and for someone who doesn't have the background in paperwork and legalities, keyboards and contracts, for the person who operates a jackhammer and does it very well, there is the sudden panic of, I'm going to have to talk to someone, who's wearing a tie, who doesn't necessarily understand what I'm doing, but is going to tell me how to do it, what I did wrong, and then is going to find my boss. I'm going to lose all of
Yeah.
those emotions that go along with having OSHA there.
And like, never mind, you're feeling nervous. This thing just happened. There's doubt. You might feel attacked, or questioned. And also, like, I mean, look, the OSHA investigators, like they know job sites. They're familiar with how things work. But just like how you and I could be familiar with how things work, we're not actually doing it. So,
Yes, correct.
so even though there's familiarity, it's not the same as practicality. And things happen on jobs. You have to pivot, just like you and I need to pivot in our jobs.
Yes,
There's certain things that they're like, okay, well, I was jackhammering and I hit this so that I had to, move slightly over here, and then, this happened and this sprayed out here. Like, who knows? But there's certain pivots that you have to do on the job site that not everyone might understand exactly
yeah.
how it worked.
So throwing a question back to you about just job site losses, and when you receive your first file, when it comes to you and it's on your desk, which ones do you prefer handling? Do you prefer handling the ones that are a hot mess with a whole bunch of missing pieces and your roadmap isn't clear, or do you prefer the slam dunk? We've got that. Defendant is in the clear. Liability is good. Which do you prefer?
That's a really tough question because it's hard because even the slam dunks, so to speak, first of all, there's no slam dunk really, I think, but even the slam dunks are hard because you're like, okay, this looks really good. However, how do I get them out and not spend a ton of money getting there, because I know it's really good. And that's the hard part with those slam dunks, because, and I hate using that term slam dunk, but I just am going to keep using it
Yes.
because like you're going to report it like, look, this looks good, but it is going to cost us X to get out. Or you have to make that evaluation. Like, how can I get the insured out of this case in the most economically efficient way and in the best way rather than dragging it out. The messy ones sometimes are a little bit easier from a defense perspective because you're like, okay, this like it's a mess and you have to figure out how to solve the mess, which is fun. I think that's fun. But you don't sometimes it might not have a clear line at the beginning, although I do feel like every case you pretty much can know in the first 60 days, like this is a hot mess, it's not, liability is not looking good, and you can this is the associated costs that you could probably ballpark how much the settlement could be. Maybe we can resolve it sooner rather than later because I know it's going to cost X to spend Y at the end, so maybe we can spend Y at the beginning and not save you all these defense costs. So I don't think I prefer one or the other. I think I would prefer not to have all hot messes and all all clean ones. A nice
Right.
mix is good.
Yeah.
But I think I struggle the most when you have good liability defenses and bad damages, because the dollar amount is the dollar amount, but you also know to get your client probably shouldn't be spending that dollar amount, so you have to divide the best path to get them out or get out as efficiently as possible.
Those are the tough cases. As an insurance company, it is tough to explain to an insured who really did nothing wrong or contributed so little as to obviously not be the proximate cause, and then to explain, depending on your joint and several situation or any of those variables, to explain, yes, we're putting up a $500,000 reserve on your policy, and yeah, I know, Mr. Insured or Ms. Insured, that's going to make it difficult for you to shop around, get other insurance if you need it, and it's it's hard to, when someone's done all of the right things, it's a very difficult discussion to say, thank you for doing all of the right things. We're still going to be on the hook for this amount or this amount. And those are tough discussions.
Oh, they're the worst.
Yeah.
And so many times, though, it's associated with other things, or I mean, most times it's associated with other things, and it's like, look, you're in this jurisdiction, this is how this could get perceived, and even though you did all the right steps, we go in front of this jury in this court, and they're going to hear this, even though this had nothing to do with this, you still could get hit for Y, and that and I feel like people have the hardest time swallowing that are not you and I. It's the the owner of the company that has to hear that they're like, what the heck, like,
yeah,
and that's where I struggle with the most, because they don't deal with this part that you and I deal with as often, and they don't understand necessarily how the intricacies work when you are actually, you might be before a jury, or you're in court, or you're in mediation, or whatever it may be, or arbitration. The impact of some of the side distraction things, how they can impact the bottom line.
Yes, exactly. And, even at mediation, when there's a lot of them that are Zoom now, but when you're sitting there with the insured, it's a little different case when you're looking at, say, 100,000 in damages. You're telling the insured, and this, of course, oversimplified and not a real case study, but $100,000, the insured's 5% at fault, and you have the discussion there at the table. Hey, we're going to have to put probably 2,500, 5,000 to get out of this. That's not the optimal outcome, and they say, yeah, I wish we didn't have to do that. Now take that 100,000, turn it into $1 million, 10 million, 100 million, start adding zeros. And suddenly that $50,000 conversation is, oh, that's a lot, but I see that. And that $500,000 conversation is, that's real money,
Yeah,
and
that's a lot of money.
Particularly when there's self-insured retentions, there's deductibles involved. I mean, it all looks good when you purchase the policy, but the heartburn of not doing anything wrong and then having to cough up $100,000 SIR, or write a check for a $50,000 deductible. Those are from a management standpoint, those are the conversations that are the most likely to escalate.
Yes. Yeah. And what I think also is complicated in a lot of these larger construction accident cases too is that you have so many other parties involved, and sometimes those other parties are the ones that prevent you from resolving or getting out. Because while you could try to settle directly with plaintiff, it might not work, and then you just it becomes increasingly more difficult, I think, when you have more parties involved,
Mm-hmm.
and keeps you in longer a lot of the times. Because even though you're like, okay, I, I see what we did or we didn't do. Let's cut to the chase and let's try to resolve it early. You got all these other people who are like, no, not so fast.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then you have back
Yes.
actions that get filed, and that slows everything
And
down.
then appeals, and it's and we are in a world where we like the instant answers, and they aren't there in the litigation world.
No.
And so when you are at your desk doing your job and handling these things, what are the things that you like to see from the insurance handlers, from the adjusters, the examiners? What are the things that make your job go better? What makes things easier?
I like when there has been an investigation ahead of time.
Yeah, I guess that's good, huh?
But I mean, you don't always have that luxury. Sometimes
Yeah.
you don't know about the case until the case is filed.
Yeah.
But I love it when there's been notification of a potential claim right away. There's been an investigation. There's been interviews. It's well documented, because I have stuff that's fresh from the beginning. So, say I wasn't involved from the time the incident happened, I already have information that came very soon after it happened, so that where memory is fresh. I love having documentation. I love having an open communication with my adjuster, because we're supposed to be a team. This isn't like I don't know any better than you do. I know about this, you know about that, and we work better when we work together. And also, like, if I don't mind pushback. If you don't like what I'm saying, tell me you don't like what I'm saying. But I'm not going to tell you what you only want to hear, because that doesn't do us any good either. So really, it's the working relationship that I think makes all of this go more smoothly for everyone involved, including the insureds. Because if we're working together, even if we don't 100% see eye to eye, because you're not always going to see eye to eye, everyone kind of evaluates cases slightly different. But as long as we hear each other out and we're like, okay, this is a good collective plan. This makes the most sense to get out, because isn't that the goal, the exit?
Yeah. Yes.
It's
one
not...
way or the other, they all settle one way or the other.
Yes. But also, like, an open communication there too, and it's on the attorney just as much as it's on the claims adjuster. Like, do you want to litigate this to the end? Do you want to close the file, or is this one that you feel so strongly that the insured did nothing wrong that you want to try it? If that's the case, then we will work it up like we're going to try it. But typically, I from my many conversations with many adjusters, trial is not typically the goal.
Right.
It might be the insured's goal. Sometimes the insureds feel strongly about trial,
Yeah.
but not necessarily us in this space, because we know that trial is very unpredictable, even with the best offenses.
Yeah. So in the tripartite relationship, do you find yourself very often in situations where your client is saying, we got to try this, we've got to try this, and then you've got the insurance company who is saying, let's get this settled? I mean, do you, I think I know the answer to this, but do you run into that?
Not often. I do hear it sometimes, but typically you can reason with the insured as to the length that it would take, the time it would take, and the practicality of things. Although, like, if they feel that strongly, I mean, it depends what's in their policy too. If they feel that strongly, and they sometimes they can trump all. And
Mhm. Yeah.
if that, but how about you? Like, with when I imagine that you have the same type of relationship experiences that you might have insureds that feel very strongly, and then you're looking at the business side of things and the practicality of side, and you're looking at the legal part, and you're consulting with your counsel. I mean, I imagine you feel that pull sometimes as well.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I think there are definitely instances where negotiating the tripartite relationship can have its pitfalls, and there are some times when defense counsel, obviously you are, you're not defending me, you're defending your client, my insured, um, is sounding the alarm bells very, very early and very correctly. Hey, this is a problem. This may have some big numbers behind it, and depending on what that warning is, what that alarm is, that can trigger the insurance company. Oh, got to get reserves up. Got to get. Let's get this settled. What can we do here? Do we have any, do we have any good defenses? And the same reaction from the insured might be, oh, okay, well, let's take a trial and see what happens. And and when the insurance company has X number of dollars on the line, X number of dollars in legal fees, and all of that, it's a different impact for us sometimes, where we say, well, let's stop the bleeding while we can. Um, the insured doesn't always see the bleed because of the very fact that insurance exists. They're limited usually in what their own exposure is. So that can create tensions in the process, but I seldom find that it just totally derails things. I mean,
Yeah.
I haven't been in a position where it's just gone catastrophically wrong. There are some that have some friction points, absolutely. But
Yeah, I would say I think what derails most most things more than anything is reservation of rights letters.
mm,
that it sends insureds into an absolute tizzy.
yes, okay. So you may be able to solve an argument. I won't say that it nearly broke into a fist fight, but it was probably the most exciting moment I've seen in a seminar, where there was when there was a panel discussion regarding reservation of rights letters to defense counsel. On one hand, there was one person who felt very strongly that defense counsel should never see the reservation of rights letter. There was another person who felt very strongly that there is a duty to make sure that the counsel defending the insured has the complete scope of coverage. How do you navigate that? What's your thought process?
I prefer to know, however, with the caveat that I still defend the case fully. Because it's the interest of the insured, but I want the insured to, obviously they need to know. And when I get asked about it, I say I have nothing to do with coverage opinion. I have no say in it. I don't. I know about it, but I don't have any input in it. And if you feel uncomfortable with it, you should go talk to a private counsel and get their opinion on it. And I offer no opinion on it one way or the other. But I
Yeah.
do want to know. Just I because it could put a monkey it can put a monkey wrench into things if you don't know. So I
Yeah.
prefer to know, but I understand the side too, that because it's sticky, right? It's sticky.
Yeah.
So I do understand why some defense counsel would want to not know about any of it at all. I just personally, I want to know if it's out there, and I but again, I've always told any of my insureds, like, look, I'm defending this case for you, and I'm putting your interests first. If you feel worried, talk to personal counsel, and they can advise you if you need to retain someone else, if you want them to monitor it, make sure everything's talk to someone else about that. I'm not weighing in on coverage.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. I think it's.
I don't know if that's the correct answer, but that's mine.
No. I think that's. I think it's one of those. It's one of the trickier parts of the relationship to navigate. That it's. And yeah, particularly in, say, the completed operations type of cases where, there are definitely policy restrictions, and there's, I have been the author of multi-dozen page RORs. It's it is disconcerting for an insured to get a letter, after paying, hundreds, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions in premiums, to get the letter that says, well, this thing under which you're getting sued, it's possibly not covered. You might want to take a look at that. You got a little mark there. Those aren't the discussions that give the warm and fuzzies to the people we insure.
And I imagine for you it results in some angry phone calls.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's the time you probably get yelled at the most, I would think.
Yes. Though it's not personal, because I would be pretty mad too.
Yeah.
I mean, look the situation around, and yeah, I would be the very person on the phone saying, hey, I just paid X thousands of dollars in insurance bills. Why aren't you covering this? So any way you cut it, it can be a tricky relationship.
Yeah, I've been on the receiving end of that a phone call that I had to call the insured. I'm like, hey, so I just want to make sure you saw that letter. And they hadn't seen the letter, and then I got yelled at about the letter. I'm like, I didn't write the letter. I'm just making sure you saw the letter.
Yeah, these are emotional processes for the people involved. For us, it's just what we do, but it's
yes. Well, I hate to do this, but we're pretty much out of time. But I like to wrap up all of my podcasts kind of circling back. And I like to ask most of my guests this, that, knowing what you know now and knowing where you are now in your career, what advice would you give young Kevin?
Wow, there's quite a few pieces. I think the number one would be relax. Relax and focus. They're not mutually exclusive. You can go with the flow and have a direction to your flow. I think that's what I would tell young Kevin.
Yeah.
That and Nickelback really wasn't actually that bad.
Oh no, I might disagree with that.
Just had to get something controversial in there.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm not a big Nickelback fan, but I do think that's good advice. It's definitely some advice I would share with my younger self too. I was so wound tight, and I still am to some extent, but I've loosened up over the years because you realize it all kind of works out. But I remember back, in high school and college being like very, very tense. And I wish my advice to myself would be like, enjoy it a little bit more, because you don't get it back.
Yes, that is so true.
Yeah.
That is really true.
But Kevin, thank you so much. I mean, look, we could have talked for another hour and a half, and maybe we can do a part 2, because there's so much in your world that there's just so many topics we can pull out and talk about. So I'll leave the bookmark there. So maybe we'll have you on for again if I haven't traumatized you too much today.
No, I'm feeling okay afterwards. So.
But I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today, and share your experiences. And look, you asked me a lot of questions. I was in the hot seat more than I normally am. I was like, wow, I don't usually have to answer questions, so thank you for that. This is not usually my role. But again, thank you so much for your time. And I look forward to having you on again if you'll come back.
Oh, absolutely, Megan. I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. And of course, for everyone listening, if you like what you hear, please like and subscribe to Claims Never Sleep on your favorite podcast streaming platform. You can also find us on YouTube. Thank you.